Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and this morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Oxford University Press. It's an important book and one I think would be very interesting to anybody who's been looking recently at the work of the top courts in the world. Obviously we have the UK Supreme Court and the US Supreme Court. This one is the Irish Supreme Court with a subtitle, Historical and Comparative Perspectives. The book has been written by Brice Dickson. Elizabeth was the lead writer on this review, and we've given the title of our review this: New from the Oxford University Press, Current Insights and Perspectives on the Irish Supreme Court. And as I said before, it's an important book at an important time with the development of these top courts and how they look at decision making where in fact there is no further appeal except perhaps the political appeal with a change of government or whatever might happen. But in fact the role of the Supreme Court is very important. The Irish one to be obviously considered very important as well. Let's look at the book first. Here it is, a hardback. There it is. There's the actual front. There's the spine. There's nothing on the back. You can see the spine there. So as I say, it runs to about 370 pages. On the dust cover there's a little bit of blurb about other publications, similar publications. And then at the front there's some detailed information about the book itself. But if we go to the back first of all, we can just have a look at the index itself. The index is by page numbering, and it's fairly substantial. It's there we go, you can see it. It covers a lot. It mentions quite a large number of people who are involved in the Supreme Court itself, named individuals. Then you've got a bibliography which is right at the back, and that actually is quite substantial because there's a lot of work has gone into it. Then of course there are various appendices at the back. If we go to the front of the book, you can see the front page here. That's the main front page. Then after that we go into a blurb about the book itself there, and a foreword. Always read the forewords for these books, they're very, very important. This foreword obviously written by Ronan Keane on the 19th of September 2018, and he says a very useful quote: Professor Dickson's valuable and groundbreaking work is certain to be welcomed by judges, counsels, solicitors, lecturers and researchers, and of course students of law of every age. And absolutely right too. Then there's a preface which of course comes from the author, who's based in Queen's University Belfast, and that's dated the 14th of November 2018. Then you've got the contents section there, and it's actually looking at the Irish Free State as a whole, which I think is quite useful because one has to remember the history, because we're getting near to the point where it's 100 years since the establishment of the Irish Free State. Then you've got the rest of the content section running all the way through there. A total number of chapters, 13, including a conclusions section at the end. And then you've got 5 appendices. Then of course table of cases, which are very interesting, and some international cases at the end. And then you've got legislative provisions and treaties. So obviously again important points to bear in mind, and of course Ireland is very strongly linked in many ways with the United Kingdom, so it's a very interesting book for many people within the UK. There's a list of abbreviations which I found very helpful. Again, some of them may seem a bit straightforward, but it's quite useful because it's amazing how you can just suddenly forget what an abbreviation might actually mean. Now there's the start of the book, introduction, and then you can see at the bottom there's a little bit of footnoting, and you can see footnoting goes all the way through. There's no paragraph numbering or anything like that, but you've got a lot of detail, and it's an easy-ish book to read through from cover to cover, because there's not too much along the way with footnoting, which can sometimes make it a bit more difficult to read depending on what you're looking for. But I found what I was looking for in the book quite easily. Now what do we say? We say this: here's an absorbing read. And that's what it is. It's a study and an analysis, and indeed an evaluation of the Irish Supreme Court, focusing on its performance, its jurisprudence, and generally its ethos in the past 94 years of its existence. And as I say, the Irish Republic, the Irish Free State, will be celebrating its 100th anniversary in the not too distant future. So it's an important historic book to a certain extent, because it shows the length of time that has gone by with the work of that Supreme Court, whereas of course the United Kingdom Supreme Court is a relatively new creation, because we used the House of Lords before then, so things are rather different here in the United Kingdom. The author of the book is Brice Dickson from Queen's University, Belfast, and he offers a number of pertinent and revealing comparisons between the Irish Supreme Court and other Supreme Courts in other common law jurisdictions, primarily of course UK and the US. The result is what he refers to as a highly selective survey of the output of the Irish Supreme Court over its 94-year history. He's careful to point out that there is little reference to matters relating to private law, namely contract law, commercial law, tort law, property law. These warrant, of course, a separate study. Instead, his aim has been to analyse, in his words, quote, the contribution made by the Supreme Court to the development both of Irish law and of Irish nationhood. And I think that really is the mission statement, and it always has been. And as I've said, with the centenary, the 100th anniversary coming up of the creation of the Irish Free State, this is an important point of time for the people of Ireland. Now, some useful and fascinating historical perspectives emerge here, of course, as well as an enlightening comparison with other Supreme Courts in the common law jurisdictions, as I've said. And these apex courts, including those of the UK, Canada, India and the US, the latter being the most studied court in the world, having generated several giant-size reference books and countless articles in leading law journals. Because it's controversial, it's dealing with big issues, and that's what the Supreme Court is there for. Whether it's the House of Lords in our country here in the United Kingdom or a Supreme Court elsewhere, that is what the role of that final, it's called an apex court if you like, it's the top of the tree, it's the final court, and that's what they do. They deal very much with important, very important points, especially in terms of jurisprudence and hard cases. Not quite as hard as the fall of the book just then. Now let me go on from that to say, as not a lot of people know this, it's worth mentioning that for almost the last 50 years, as the author has noticed, the first of 8 issues of each year's Harvard Law Review have been devoted entirely to an overview of the previous year's decisions by the US Supreme Court. This reflects the power of the court, including its power to declare any act of Congress or that of the legislature of any individual US state to be unconstitutional and therefore invalid. Also consider the matter of the US president having the right to nominate persons to to fill vacancies on the court. And one can witness the controversy with the appointment of Brett Kavanaugh to the court's august precincts, a decision around which resentment still festers. So you can see how important and how controversial the work and the structure and the makeup of the court can be. And that's bearing in mind that's the United States. With such perspectives in mind then, what we get here with Dickson is he identifies 4 main expectations of what, in his view, a nation should expect from a top court. To summarise, they include clarity in decision making, fairness based on such considerations as justice and morality, efficiency in the conduct of court business, and respect. And it's pointed out here that until fairly recently, the efficiency of the court was severely hampered by a staggeringly heavy workload, which has been alleviated by the creation in 2014 of a new Court of Appeal. And I do think that helps, because you do have to have the various stages of court, apart from the criticism everybody levels, which is very costly. The fact is you do have to have some sort of weeding out system, so that you get to the position where the court at the top is looking at issues of general public importance, where a general principle of law is involved. And I think that really is the key to what we are looking for certainly in the United Kingdom, which is actually a little bit different from the structure and the way that the country operates, say, in the United States. So one can see the comparisons, and it's really getting a blend of what will fit in to your own country's needs. And of course that's what Professor Dickson does very well indeed. The book's been published by OUP, and it focuses on specific areas including constitutional and admin law, criminal justice, the law pertaining to family and personal life, and much more. Obviously that last one is again a very controversial and important issue, because it deals with very fundamental questions such as same-sex relationships, marriage, and of course abortion. And it's an impressive work of research and analysis, and I thought it was eminently readable, which is nice, because I think it's an important work for people to read, to get an idea, especially if you're doing comparative law studies. It'd be very useful to understand how the different jurisdictions work. And as Ronan Keane remarks in the foreword, it's certain to be welcomed, as I said at the beginning, by a range of people: judges, counsel, solicitors, lecturers, and of course students, undergraduates at every level. The publication date is cited as at the 14th of November 2018. Lovely picture of it on the front, I thought. Really nice picture of the court. The book itself, as I say, it's a hardback. There's the spine, just opening it in the middle. The Supreme Court and Northern Ireland. Again, interesting case, R versus Hockey. Now, Charles Hockey, you probably remember, was the Minister of Finance at the time, and of course very difficult relationship between the Free State and Northern Ireland. So again you see he tries to deal with it. Bearing in mind that the author is based in Belfast, he does come out with very useful points. He talks about the Sunningdale Agreement, which I remember well. In fact, this is not the original Sunningdale Agreement, but a later one. Now, also looking very much at the history. So the book itself, as I've said before, is partly a trip down memory lane in terms of history, and I think he deals with it in a very, actually to be fair, very sensitive way. So thank you very much indeed to OUP and to Professor Dickson for a first-class book. I really enjoyed reading it. Thank you. Bye-bye.